Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to me and how are you. This will be super beneficial, I'm sure, for a lot of the business subscribers and then the students at UCL. Just to jump straight in, you were the CFO at Xbox, and I'm wondering, what does the CFO of Xbox, what does the role really entail? And what were maybe your top 2 or 3 priorities? I know there's probably no one typical day, but what were maybe some of your main priorities?
Yeah, well, first of all, it was not playing games all day, every day, as everyone assumes that's what it actually is. There was some game playing. Game playing was actually very important. And one of the things that one of the benefits of it, this was back in the days when we actually printed discs. I used to come in on a Monday morning and get literally a pile of every copy of every game that was created in the prior week on my desk. It was sort of one of the benefits that I just pick and choose and play with it. So, but the vast majority of it was really about growing the business. When I came into the role, we were losing about $1 billion a year. The business is a very capital intensive. You build the box, you sell the box for a loss, and then you make the profits up on the games later on. That takes time. And it takes years. And so what we did was we actually moved it from $1 billion of loss to $1 billion of profit over a series of time. Pardon? It took about 3 years.
3 years. Okay, wow, that's quite quick.
Yeah, it was pretty good, and we had some, good luck in there. We brought out Kinect, which was a huge hit, really sort of changed the market and allowed us to do some things that hadn't been done in the past. Because one of the things that happens in a console business is you can sell a certain number of consoles at $499 and then a certain number at $399, and you keep dropping price to get to the next segment of population. And your theory is you only drop price when you've taken the cost out of the box, but you're trying to, with Kinect, what we were able to do is we were actually able to keep the price high because people saw the value of Kinect, and so we were taking costs out of the box, keeping the price high, and that's how we got the profitability. And then coming out with some great games like Halo, Forza, PGR, things like that. The other thing then, a lot of time on the Xbox Live business.
Yep.
That was sort of one of those that we were really the first people to create these consumer subscription businesses ourselves and Netflix. We spent actually a lot of time with Netflix. Reed Hastings was a member of the Microsoft board, so he helped us a lot with the way Netflix was doing its subscription businesses. I hope we helped them a little bit as well. But we were really trying to build those businesses, and Xbox Live was always one of the the fascinating elements of the business for me. I have always enjoyed subscription business models and really playing with all the different elements there, the subscription side, the transaction side, the advertising side, seeing what could be done. So a lot of, I would say the vast majority of the time was trying to build the growth elements of the business in conjunction with the other key elements of leading any large team, leading the team, setting strategy, ensuring that the books themselves are just being closed and your forecasts and your budgets are correct. So I think they're the key elements of it.
Okay, just a quick follow up is I as an equity analyst, the key data points, as an analyst you're looking at every quarterly when the company's reporting earnings. For you, how often are you looking at data points and thinking, okay, this strategy is working or it's not working, maybe we need to pivot to something else? How often is the CFO looking at that kind of stuff?
Yeah, different data points you're looking at in different times. Xbox is a consumer business. And so therefore, we've got a phrase, it's retail detail. And so you're looking at your sales of consoles weekly, both sell in and sell through, how much Microsoft sells into the channel and how many end customers buy from the retailers. Because you're always looking at your inventory levels. And then we were doing a lot of visualizations, a lot of machine learning, a lot of statistics. I'm a statistician and my master's is in statistics. And so we would be doing a lot of trying to interpolate, are we ahead of the curve? Are we behind the curve? What do these latest numbers mean? The Xbox business, like many consumer businesses, is really fundamentally got this weird timing to it. We do 30% of our year between Black Friday, which is the last Friday in November, and Christmas. So those 4 or 5 weeks, we do 30% of our entire business. So if you're, and one of the nasty little secrets is that Christmas doesn't move. If you miss Christmas, you've missed the year. And it's as simple as that. So, when we get into the Christmas period, the holiday period, I'd be looking at daily numbers.
Okay.
So because days there would be the same as weeks in earlier in the year, and then weeks become months. So it's that important. Then on the P&L we'd look at that monthly, and
Okay.
then overall strategy you're sort of reviewing that every 6 months. Especially with the seasonality of the holiday period. In January we'd always sit down and understand how the holiday did. Was the market what we thought it was? Was their market share? How was the mix? How did our games do? And do this reassessment of your strategy. Then you do the same thing in the summer. There used to be a massive game conference called E3 in Los Angeles, and at that, we'd release our latest games. Sony, Nintendo would do theirs. We'd see what the reaction from the street was. So we'd always sit down at that stage and just make sure we're still on plan.
Okay. Okay. Super interesting. Super interesting. I could go on for a while, but I'll hand over to Harry now. How are you?
Yeah, thank you very much, Kevin. Halo was such a good game as well.
Excellent.
Now that we have talked about what you do, obviously as a student for me, we'd like to know how you do it, right? So like, how does one become like CFO of Xbox, say? Like, what could be the possible career paths once you leave uni?
Yeah. So, I mean, my career path was, I don't know, was it normal or not? So, I'm a qualified accountant. I went into practice after university. Didn't like practice. Felt being an auditor, I was too far away from the business. So the practice I worked with, which was a medium-sized Irish practice, had a situation where it would put its accountants into sort of run the businesses as controllers. So I did that and really enjoyed the business side. Found it was much more what I wanted. So then I joined an Irish company and I was their group financial controller for 5 years, heavy manufacturing, articulated trucks, and then leasing and subscription deals and things like that. From there, I actually decided I just wanted to do something else. So I came to the States with another Irish company as their international controller, once again, heavy manufacturing. And then in 2000, I joined Microsoft. My wife worked for Microsoft, so she moved to Seattle. So I got a job in Seattle with Microsoft. And because of my hardware manufacturing, I joined the mice and keyboards team as a financial analyst. And this is Microsoft actually built the mice and keyboards that you use every day. Now, I was just pure lucky that is the division that the Xbox came out of. And I just happened to join like literally 3 or 4 months before they started Xbox. So I was one of the first finance guys on Xbox as a junior analyst. And I spent the next 15 years in Xbox. So I really did work my way up. Now, I would say, after the first 3 or 4 years, I was beginning to make a name for myself as a guy who was willing to make decisions. Because I've worked, for medium-sized companies where you do actually have to make decisions and you're held accountable for those decisions. So in the parts of the business I was working, I was making decisions. So I started on the base hardware products, and then I moved over to support the sales and marketing teams, and then I ended up supporting all the sales and marketing. And then one day I had a conversation with my boss. And she said, and she was the CFO of Xbox. She was like, sorry, she was the CFO of consumer, all the consumer products. And she was like, look, you're at the point in your career now where you've probably got as far as you can in the job you're in, which was the head of sales and marketing, finance. She goes, if you want to go further, you're going to have to take a different job. And so I went off and I really found a job that I thought would help me to become CFO of Xbox one day. So I went over to become the head of live finance and the head of gaming finance. So that was a Friday evening. I turned up Monday morning to find out that the vice president I was going to support had quit over the weekend and my job had been eliminated. And so that was a rough day. And I went off, I played some golf, and the company called me and said, look, come on, we'll find a job for you. Don't worry about it. So I came back in and, 4 months later, I was at that stage working for the CFO, and I was excited to work for him because, he had certain skills that I didn't have. He was very good in mergers and acquisitions and strategy. And so my plan was to work for him for, maybe 2 years and set myself up to be his successor. It didn't quite work out like that. 4 weeks later, he got promoted to become chief operating officer. And so they promoted me to be CFO, which is about 2 years earlier than I expected. And frankly, I wasn't ready for it. That first year was very scary. I was excited because he was still around as COO. But then he got very sick. So he actually had to take a year off. And so here I was, basically making it up as I was going along. And it got so bad that I actually went in and tendered my resignation at one stage because I just felt I was out of my depth. And, my boss, who was the president of Xbox, was a tough guy. He was a self-made billionaire, really tough guy. And so he was just kicking the living daylights out of me. So I went in and offered to resign and said, look, I'm obviously not good enough for the job. And he was like, what are you doing? You're doing great. I'm like, you're beating me up every single day. And he goes, that's because I think you're great. Otherwise, I'd have just fired you. And, so that was an interesting moment. And so after that, I sort of got into my rhythm. The second year was much easier. And then I was there for 8 years, doing that role for 8 years out of my 15 in Xbox. So that was sort of the journey to it. It's one of those, look, the best piece of career advice I ever had was always have a 5-year plan and never be afraid to walk away from it. And I think that was, very much, I planned to, I've always wanted to be a BG CFO. The path wasn't the path I expected at all. But because I had a plan, I was always able to react to the opportunities that came in front of me.
Right. Okay. Super interesting. And sorry, how are you?
I'm going to start using the five years plan.
I was gonna say, Kevin. So you mentioned there you were an auditor when you graduated. You did control.
Yeah.
You're talking about your boss who was like more specialized in M&A. I'm interested, like, what kind of like technical skills or like personal skills does someone need to have? I mean, this isn't something. I mean, from my understanding, it's not a kind of career you can go into without, a good understanding of accounts and finance things. Like what, or is it?
It's actually very interesting. In the States, it's very different to Europe. I would say the vast majority of CFOs here are not qualified accountants. It is the exact opposite to Europe. I mean, I would say only maybe 5 to 10% of the CFOs that I know here are qualified accountants. I'm by far the exception. A lot of them come in through the banking route and have spent time in banking and do it that way. And then what they do, and it's the same, as in when you get to be an executive in any division or any company, you hire people who are very good at the areas that you're not good at. One of the areas that I've never enjoyed or never been very good at is sort of planning and process. So running the budget planning process, that sort of area is just not something I'm not detailed enough for that. But I've always had a super head of FP&A who worked for me. The guy worked for me for 20 years, and he did that for me. And so, and we worked very well together. And so that's one of the key things that you can do is to hire in people who complement your skill set. But it's very different in the US. I do think the accounting background helped me. I would never have to worry about, accounting compliance and getting into the depth of your debits and credits did help at some stages. When there is, we had at one stage the 3 red rings of death, if you remember that, when all the Xbox 360s were going to blow up.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Oh yeah, that was a fun day. Telling Bill Gates that. But trying to understand the accounting there and what we were going to do, that was very technical, and it was great to be able to have that and work through it with them. So I would say anyone can do it. You just have to understand what your core skill sets are. And then understand where you're not done with those skill sets and hire the right people to complement.
Okay, interesting. A quick follow-up is those are, I guess, then the technical skills. You just mentioned there, those that day where the Xbox is about to blow up and you have to have that conversation with Bill Gates. Like, what? First of all, what did he say? And second of all, like, what are the kind of personal skills you need to be like a CFO as well? Because it's not, as you said, just about the numbers. If 5-10% of
Yeah.
the numbers, what the rest of it? Yeah.
No, I mean, first of all, leadership is really important. And there's a difference between you need to be a good manager, and then to get to the really senior roles, you actually need to change from management to leadership. And there's quite a difference. Management you can learn. I certainly believe, and that's one of the things I tell people who are working with me. You can learn how to delegate. You can learn how to manage. Being a leader is probably a little bit more inherent. It's a really sort of a skill set because when you're trying to inspire people to work hard, you're trying to inspire people for the long term. That takes, I think, a little bit more of an innate skill that you have or that you're willing to invest in. And so I think that is a hugely important. The other thing is, look, you've got to work hard. There's no ifs or buts about it. Hey, I'm retired now, so I don't have to worry about HR. Steve Jobs had a great phrase, which was the difference between a career and a job is the difference between 60 hours and 40 hours. I worked at least 60 hours every week. I was at my desk at 7. I worked till 7. I never took a break. It was, all in all the time when I worked. I was there, there was no goofing off. It was intense all the time. And so, you put in those hours and you make that difference. So, I think there's some of the intangibles that you have to have, and you have to, and then you have to have the, that idea of decision making is really important. The vast majority, 9 out of 10 people, frankly, don't want to be decision makers. Because the minute you make a decision, you're responsible. And that leads you to a very tough situation when you're working with someone like Gates or Ballmer or that. They can be tough guys. You don't get to be the richest guy in the world by being nice. And so, that being willing to make decisions and stand by your decisions. You can't if you throw people under the bus for a decision you made, they're never going to trust you again. So you've really got to be able to stand by those decisions, and you're not going to get them all right. So one of the things I learned from Ballmer, Steve Ballmer, who was the CEO of Microsoft, he had a great phrase, which was, "I reserve the right to be less stupid tomorrow than I am today," which meant he would make it. If the decision was wrong, he'd make another decision. And you only, in that case, you've only got to get 51% right. And so, but the worst thing you can do is make a decision and then hold on to it, even if in the face of it being wrong, because you don't want to be seen to be countermanding yourself. So, these are the things you have to learn.
Okay, perfect. Super clear, super interesting, Kevin. Hey, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kevin. Just a very this one is pretty long. So I'm assuming that throughout your tenure at Microsoft, you have worked with global teams and you had to integrate businesses, at various different scales into the Microsoft ecosystem. And I'm assuming yourself, you have worked on multiple M&A deals as well. I might be completely wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but could you shed us more light into what you think will be sort of the potential impact on sort of M&A strategy for firms like Microsoft in an age where there is a greater focus on software as a service rather than hardware?
Yeah, I actually, it's interesting. The M&A deals, and we've done some big ones and some small ones. I always preferred the small ones, and they were generally the ones where our engineers would come to us and go, "Look, there's a company in Israel that they're really good at this piece of technology, and if we buy them, we can accelerate our product roadmap by 6 months or a year." And maybe you're buying 5-10 people, a small company that size in Israel, and you're just putting them right into the engineering team. You're not moving them from Israel or something like that, but they're going in. We found a lot of success with M&A like that. We found an awful lot of success as well buying games studios, for a piece of content that we thought was really good. On some of the bigger ones, look, after I left Xbox, one of the reasons the job I took after that was head of consumer, CFO of consumer. And I did that because we were just about to buy Nokia, and Nokia sales and marketing finance reported to me. And so, that was talk about a massive one that went a bit sidewards and ended up costing us $12 billion. And it was just sort of the scale of it. And there was other reasons as to what happened there. But I do think you can have very successful large and small acquisitions. I look at something like LinkedIn, which Microsoft bought for, I think, $27 billion. It was a very successful integration. Now, what we did there was the CEO of LinkedIn just reports directly to Satya. So the entire org underneath him was really left untouched. And so the culture of it is very similar. But what they've done is they've brought LinkedIn and their social graph into the Microsoft graph. So they've made, a very collaborative experience for them and made sure that we are obviously the lead engineering teams that they share their work with. And so I think that has been a very successful approach to bringing in acquisitions rather than just trying to put them right into the company and breaking it up into different ways, which is what we tried to do with Nokia. So look, I think acquisitions are vital for companies. Microsoft probably does literally hundreds of acquisitions a year. The vast majority of them are quite small for technical solutions, but even some large ones like something like Nuance or that, if there is that ability to accelerate your market share, your market size, to grow your market size or accelerate your market share, then for a company with Microsoft, with their resources, it often makes sense to bring that in. And I think you'll see continued focus on M&A as you go forward.
Perfect. Kevin, last question, because I don't want to keep you any longer and really, really appreciate your time. But, for students like how are you, for even people like myself who's not too far on in his career, like CFO of Xbox, the CFO of a big organization seems a long way away. Like, what kind of advice would you give students who are thinking, I want to go into finance, like how you, but like that seems a long way away. Like, what kind of advice would you give? And did you think you could ever be CFO of Xbox? I know you said you wanted to be a CFO one day, but yeah.
When I joined the company, I had no idea. It seemed so far away. And then it went very quickly. I joined Microsoft age 30 and I was CFO at 37. So it was 7 years, from entry analyst to, to being CFO. So it went quite quickly.
Yeah.
What I would say here is you've got to understand your skills and your weaknesses. And you've really got to be very clear in your head as to what those. And, understanding your weaknesses can be painful. You really got to find those trusted mentors, trusted bosses who tell you what your weaknesses are. And then you've got to try to work on them. Now, I was a firm believer in only working on my weaknesses to the point where it didn't hurt me. I was never going to turn myself into a great process manager. That's just not an area that I've skipped. But I made sure that I knew enough about program management and process management that I was able to manage someone who was really good at it. And so that's how I covered my weakness there. And then what I did instead was I spent my time building on my skills and my strengths. So, decision making, strategy, M&A, they were areas where I worked. And then what you need to do is, I believe you need to understand what are the key requirements for the job you want. And no one ever has all the requirements. The guy who'd been CFO before me, the guy who became COO, he didn't have really a finance background, and he wasn't a great leader internationally. And the team was international. I had people in 25 countries, and that just wasn't his skill set. Whereas I was very good at, I did 350,000 miles a year. Traveling the world, making sure that the teams around the world were good. And so, we were able to complement each other. And so, I think you've got to understand what are the requirements for the roles you're going to, what are the key important. One of the things I did when I did decide that I wanted to be a BG CFO was I went out and interviewed all the BG CFOs that were in Microsoft, and there was 8 of them. And from them, I created a map as to what the skill sets they felt were required for the job. And then I assessed for myself where I was good, and I was good at driving the business. I was good at leading people. I was obviously good at the accounting. I was good at growing the business. I wasn't great at strategy, and I wasn't great at M&A. And so the next job I took was to try to fill those strategy and M&A parts. And that was a deliberate decision. Now, it didn't work out because the guy, DD left, and I was given the job. And guess where I struggled? Strategy and M&A for the first year until I got that experience. And so I do think having that clarity and putting that process and time into it to understand what are the requirements for the job you want. And there, the other nice thing is there is no lost effort in this. Any effort you put in training, reading, experience for these areas are always going to stand to you for wherever your career goes. And you never know where your career is going to go. It's you've got to go with the flow a little bit. Back to that, have a 5-year plan and never be afraid to walk away from it.
That is so good, so good. I mean, I just spoke to Lee yesterday, and she said a little bit like you're saying, like find your superpower and really like hone that, and then be really clear on where you're not so strong on, and either upskill a little bit, or as you said, like hire someone who can help you in that team.
Yeah, just get it to the point where it doesn't hurt you. You have to be, at least good at everything and then excellent at many things.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Kevin, that is absolutely unbelievable. Like, thank you so much for your time. This will help so many students, I'm sure, at UCL and the subscribers of the Business of. Really appreciate your time, and hope you have a lovely rest of the day.
Delighted to meet you guys. Thank you very much. Very fun.
Cheers, Kevin.